Hi, I'm Peter Weeb with Weeb Evangelism, and I want to talk today about how much time we got. And so in Luke 17, Jesus was talking to his disciples about his second coming when he would return. And so in Luke 17:26, it says, or Jesus said, "And just as it happened in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, they were being given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. It was the same as happened in the days of Lot. They were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, and they were planting and they were building. But on the day that Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all." And Jesus said in verse 30, "It will be just the same on the day that the Son of Man is revealed." And so, just like Noah got into the ark and they went up. And then after the flood, and then after the flood, 40 days, Noah came back down. And Jesus said it'll be just the same as in the day of Son of Man. So you will have the catching up of the church as written in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. We'll be caught up, and then you have the 7-year tribulation, and then we'll be coming back down for 1,000 years. But since 2001, when I began to seek the Lord, and then up till now, which is over 20 years, 24 years, somewhere in there, I began to realize a certain topic the Lord was always talking to me about, and it had to do with time, and it had to do with His return. And then over the years, in my journal, I write down what He says. A lot of times I write down the date. But I want to start off with, in 2003, so I'm a bachelor in West Texas. And 2001 is when I began to seek God. And so I would always go running a lot. And so my brother and I were bachelors, and we were living in a little farmhouse in the middle of 640 acres. So I would jog down a gravel road, it would go from one oil field to the next. And then eventually I would get out into a grass pasture. And then, and I would always take my dogs with. And at the time, I had 2 dogs, but then also my brother ended up getting a basset hound. And so from a friend of his, and we were just kind of taking care of it. But my dogs were, always coming with me jogging. And so one day when I was jogging, I was out in that grass pasture. And, that grass is pretty tall in some areas, about a foot high. It's not solid and thick, but, you got grass patches out there. Man, and all of a sudden, 2 jackrabbits popped up. And then I called out to my dogs. They weren't far from me, like right here to my left. And I'm like, one of my dogs' name was Baloo. I'm like, "Baloo, look, 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 look." And and he could never see those jackrabbits. Neither could my other dog. And they were like jumping up with their ears like going like this and going like that, trying to see it. And I was looking at the jackrabbits, and I was looking at my dogs, and I'm like, there, there, there. And they were facing that direction, but they could never see those jackrabbits. And it just, eventually those jackrabbits just slowly, hopped off in the distance and were gone. But in the middle of me running, looking at the jackrabbits, looking at the dogs, I was running, I heard the Lord quote this scripture so loud, like in Matthew 13:17. It says, "For truly I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desire to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it." And the moment I was hearing that scripture, I knew what the Lord was saying. Like my generation, we're the ones who are going to see things that others did not see. And I know Jesus spoke this to his disciples, and this word did come to pass, because prophets such as David and Isaiah and all those in the Old Testament, so many, they were looking forward to Jesus coming, and they never saw it. They looked forward to it, and they never saw it. And now Jesus was saying in Matthew 13, "But you see it. I'm here. I'm standing right in front of you." But again, the Lord quoted that word, and I knew it. Like, I knew the meaning behind it as I was hearing it. It's amazing sometimes how, like, it, exactly what he meant. But from that day on, I knew it, like, that we are the generation, like my generation, my age, we're going to be the ones who see things that others long to see, his coming. And Matthew 13:17, like all these years, it's been right. If someone were to say, hey, Peter, what's the scripture that is always in you, always between your eyes? And I'd say it's Matthew 13:17 and Revelation 22:11, those two right there. And the reason being is because I got such a glimpse of them. And so, and also, like in 2020, I was outside. We were still living in Texas, and I was looking at the stars, and I heard the Lord say, "Due to the rapture." And then later on, it was about a year or two later, I heard because of the rapture. And so there's going to be so many questions that will be answered because of the rapture, because he's coming. Due to the rapture, due to time. And like sometimes people may think, well, the Lord is, out there saying, hey, I hope you're ready because I'm coming soon. But no, the Lord is very involved in reaching people and touching people. And so he's actually very strategic and precise, much more than we would ever think. He has a game plan, as in helping us to bring in, a great harvest here at the end. And I know as, personally working on cotton fields in West Texas, you didn't go harvest before the cotton crop was ready, like the cotton bolls, they have to open up. And so I remember, often we would drive out into the field and it wasn't ready. The harvest wasn't ready. So why would we go harvest that field when it's not ready? Like it was close to being ready, but it wasn't ready. So we always went in with the harvesters at a precise time when we could gather the most. And so, yeah. And another time in 2003, I remember I was sitting in the back of a truck. Well, before I go there, I want to say a little bit more about because of time and due to the rapture. Because of time. And it's almost like a football game. I've thought about this often. A football game, you know what time it is when the coach starts making unusual calls because the timing is running out. And so how we need to be led in this time to listen to the Lord, as in how to do it, because he may want to change the way he does things. It's because of time. And it's just like Jesus is the core of who we are and what we do and what we believe and how we do it. He's the core. He holds it together. But you could see it also as in time. Time is bringing this all together. If we had all the time in the world, we may do it this way, but we don't. And so in 2003, I was in the back of a truck, and I was working for a farmer. And this was during harvest time. This was like October and November. And usually in West Texas, you would get your first frost like at the end of October, beginning of November. And so this was harvest time, and it had not froze yet because there were still green leaves on the tree. But I didn't think much of what my boss was saying at the time. Sitting in the back truck, we drove around the back of his house, and he pointed out two trees. He's like, that tree over there, and it was full of leaves, like it looked beautiful. He said, we planted that tree at the beginning of the year last year. And then he pointed out to another tree, and he said, this tree we planted at the end of last year, and it only had about half of the leaves on it. And I didn't think much about it, And as we drove away, I heard the Lord say, like these two trees, now is the time to be planted in the ministry field. He said others will be planted, but due to the lack of time, they won't bear all the fruit. They won't have all the fruit. And so, like over the years, I document what he says. And it's pretty clear, what he is saying. And so, yeah, and in 2020 also, living in Texas, we had an office where we had like a big world map on the wall. And it was also the room where our kids did our school in. And I remember as I walked into that room and I looked to the world map, and I heard the Lord mention two ministers. And I got to thinking later, Lord, like, why did he name those two ministers? And I began to realize pretty quick, the areas that the Lord is always talking to us about, to me about, is kind of in the same flow with them. And as I stepped in, I'll mention one of the names, but not the second name. The first minister has passed on already. But as I stepped into the room, I heard the Lord say so loud. You know, sometimes He speaks so loud, it's like almost throws you, you know. But I heard Him say, when I looked at the world map, I heard Him say, Tim LaHaye. And the second minister, I'll just name Billy Ray, because I don't want to mention their name. They haven't passed on yet, but they have been around a good while. I heard Him say, Tim LaHaye, Billy Ray, you wrap it up. And there again, once again, I knew he's talking about us. You're the generation. We're the generation. You and I, my age, we're the ones who are going to wrap this up. And yeah, I mean, I could just go on. And I wrote down some of the things, you know, not everything, over the years, just kind of some. Let me see here, what I got wrote down as well. Yeah, so in December of 2024, I also heard the Lord say, you were meant for the last days. Know it. So it will help us to understand why the Lord is saying some things, because we need to know it. We need to know that we just don't have all the time. You know, when I think about those two trees, you think about someone like Billy Graham, like he walked out his full call. You know, he had all the time, and it makes sense. You know, of course, you got to bridle your physical, not bridle, but you have to harness your how much you would do something physically so you can make it to the end, right? But then there's a generation like us, like, yeah, we do walk in that as well, but we also need to pay attention to how fast and rapid the Lord may ask us to do things. And I do have a date here. I don't know if the date is as important, but in 2000, let me see where it is. In 2016, in the middle of the night, so we're in Texas, right? We're living in Texas, and there was a guy not far down the road from us. He had like a real scratchy voice, like, you know, a scratchy voice. But in 2016, I woke up, but I heard his voice, and he said with his scratchy voice, and then the end will come. And I knew right away it was because of preaching the gospel so much that his voice I got scratchy. Like of course, you know, we have to be cautious of not getting too tired and, you know, and resting. But also we got to pay attention to when the Lord may speed it up, you know, because just like in a football game, when the clock is running out, the coach starts making unusual calls, and it's to win the game. It's to win it. But you can only do that if you're led.
I'm Jackie with Weeb Evangelism, and Peter and I want you to know how your seed is making an impact in people's lives, whether it's in the area of prisons and jails, street ministry, providing support to expecting moms in need, or books, or traveling ministry. One of the best ways that you can stay up to date with what we're doing in any of these areas and really just stay in the know of what's going on around here is by signing up for emails on our website, which is weebevangelism.com. We also want to give you the opportunity that if God is putting it in your heart to partner with us and help send us, you know, maybe you can't go yourself and maybe you're not called to go, but you do want to send. You can also find all the giving options and information right there on the website as well. You know, we are so thankful for people like you that really you just love other people so much that you want to be a part of them being reached, them being touched, being rescued by the love of God and by the power of His Word. And so we thank you and we love you, and we are really looking forward to every good thing that God has just ahead for each one of us.